Hello there, welcome to the Football Bloc. My name is Brandon. I'm joined here with my friend Harry. Today we are going to take an in-depth analysis and look at the English national team and how they're going to do at the World Cup. Obviously, Harry here is an Englishman, so I thought it was great to invite him, have him share his thoughts with us.
If that sounds good, let's get into it.
So, the first thing that you see when you're watching the English national team at the 2022 World Cup is obviously the shirts on their back, the kits. So, Harry, what is your opinion on England's kits that they're going to be wearing at this World Cup?
Yeah, Brandon, look, the home jersey looks like a training kit. You know, it would be nice as a training kit, but I just can't see it as being a viable thing for the team to wear. I don't like the blue that goes along the collar. That's just my opinion. People have different tastes, but generally online I've seen a lot of people agree with me. And as for the collared away jersey, kind of similar in the look and feel of the Real Madrid home jersey and the Manchester United home jersey with the collar and the special design along it. I think it's nice. Definitely excited to see the team wearing that, but the home one, major disappointment. What are your thoughts on it?
So, I agree for the most part. You know, I like the gradient on the home kits, but it just doesn't fit England. I think it's a nice looking shirt, but it just doesn't really scream England to me. You know, it's too blue. It almost looks kind of like a USA shirt or maybe a France shirt to a certain extent. The away shirt, though, I'm a big fan of. I think the red is a little too bright, but I love how the logo, the Nike swoosh, and the England three lions are that very light, sky blue kind of color. And then the collar, of course, is very nice. Like you said, it looks a lot like the Man United shirt, which I'm a big fan of. So, away kit, I think we can agree on. Very nice. Home kit, not so much. So,
Yeah, it goes back to Nike overall being a pretty big disappointment recently with their jerseys. They seem to have a template for all their teams. They don't make anything unique. And, it's just overall goes to show how cheap they are as a company that they can't make anything nice for the team to wear. Whereas Adidas, continues to improve every World Cup. I mean, think about the Nigeria jersey in 2018, for example. There's no reason why they can't have expert designers based in England designing a shirt that really shows the beauty of the country and of the city, London. So,
yeah, I agree. I think Adidas really hit it out of the park with this World Cup. There's a few Nike kits that I like, but for the most part, it's kind of disappointing if I'm being honest. So, yeah, Adidas, they really one-upped Nike this time around. So, all right, so before we look at England at the 2022 World Cup, let's just take a step back and look how they performed at the last World Cup, at the Euros, and most recently the Nations League, and kind of look at what the context of the English national team is heading into this tournament. So, 2018 World Cup, I thought that they did well. They made it to semifinals. Yes, it was a little disappointing from an English point of view that they lost to Belgium, I'm sure, in the third place matchup. But, this was the first time that England kind of showed up at a tournament. I do think that they did benefit from being on the easy side of the bracket, but still, good performance.
yeah, look, we beat Colombia on penalties after an unfortunate 90th minute goal by Yerry Mina. We beat Sweden pretty comprehensively, and we were hoping to beat Belgium after we lost to them in the group stage. And so it was a great performance overall, but the doubters usually say, we had an easy way to the end. I think that no World Cup game is easy. We deserve to be where we are, and frankly, we could have beaten Croatia in the semifinal, but it just didn't go our way, and Belgium beat us in the third and fourth place match.
Yeah, and then, moving on from the World Cup, you had the 2019 Nations League. I thought England grew even more. They lost to the Netherlands in the semifinals, but still, good performance. And then I think England really improved heading into Euro 2020. At times they looked a little boring. There was a few 0-0 results or 1-0, 2-0, things like that. But for the most part, England's defense was really good. They looked really solid. They didn't really look troubled throughout the majority of the tournament. They got all the way to the final. Yes, they lost to Italy. I think Italy was the best team at Euro 2020. But besides Italy, I thought England was the next best team. So it is, not a bad performance at all. Very, very good performance. The first time they made it to Euro final, and as painful as it was, as I'm sure from your point of view, to lose in Wembley, still, to make it that far and to play as strongly and as resolute as they did should be an achievement. I think you can see a visible progression of this team up into the Euros, at least from the last World Cup to the Euros.
Yeah, I mean, Gareth Southgate is known for playing a very boring brand of football. He plays, he has Kane at the top with Sterling, but it's very defensive. They don't move forward. They don't make some of the shots, and it ends up being a Kane show where he scores it by headers or by penalties. And the fact that we made it so far in Euro 2020 doesn't necessarily speak to Gareth Southgate being a master tactician. It just more speaks to the players being much more united and focused than previous generations. You go back to 2006, for example, when Steven Gerrard and Frank Lampard arguably could have won the World Cup and had an amazing squad in 2002 as well, but the club rivalries were there and got in the way. And that didn't happen in 2020. And yeah, we definitely could have won if we had better tactics. We focus more on attack, and this is why going into 2022, it's really important that Southgate does not continue to play his boring brand of football that has gotten us losses against Hungary, Germany, and Italy in the recent Nations League matches.
Yeah, speaking of the Nations League matches, I just talked about how England got better and better with each tournament, and it seems like the wheels kind of came off in the past few months, or at least the past 6 months. England went into the Nations League, in their Nations League group, as heavy favorites. I mean, it was a tough group with Hungary and Germany and Italy, but still, you'd expect England, they made it to the Euro final, that they should perform well. Instead, they got relegated. Not only did they get relegated, but they lost to Hungary on both occasions. Now, a loss here and there to a smaller team, that's acceptable, but they got crushed 4-0. 4-0 by Hungary. That's an unacceptable result. As good as Hungary is for a team like England, that is unacceptable. And there's a lot of questions to be raised about this team heading into Qatar 2022. So now we looked at the context. Let's look at the players specifically that will be on the field, or what we think the formations will be, and how we think Gareth Southgate is going to set up. Let's look at the formations, and let's start at the back, from goalkeeper, defense, midfield to attack. Maybe talk a little bit about Gareth Southgate himself. So goalkeeper, I think it's kind of self-explanatory in my opinion, but there are some people that think other goalkeepers should be given a chance. What do you think?
Yeah, look, I rate Jordan Pickford as the number one. I think he's a lock. I think if you're going to bring two more, you're going to bring Nick Pope and you're going to bring Aaron Ramsdale. Ramsdale's been pretty solid for Arsenal this season, whereas Nick Pope, he's been more of a jumper. He's been at Burnley. He's now at Newcastle, I believe. I've always rated him, but maybe that's just from more of a biased perspective because I've always liked his goalkeeping style. What do you think about goalkeepers?
So, yeah, I think that Ramsdale has been in great form. I don't think I would start him, though. And Pope, he started for a few games in the Nations League, and he didn't really look that good. I'm going to go with Pickford. I think Pickford should start, and I think he will start regardless, though, just because of his experience with the English national team. Yes, he isn't the best for Everton. He is very error-prone, but he's almost a different player when he puts on an English shirt. He was very, very good at the Euros. He only conceded, I think, 2 goals, something like that, throughout the whole tournament. And then at the World Cup, he was also very good there as well. Made some very, very important saves. I'm always going to remember that save against Colombia. I think it was Jefferson Lerma or Matías Uribe had like a long shot that was just a laser into the top corner, and he jumped up to save it. Wonderful save. So, I think Pickford's a lock. The defense, on the other hand, that's completely up in the air. I think that Southgate's probably going to go with a 3-5-2 or a 3-4-2-1. But either way, he's going to have 3 center backs. And who do you think those 3 center backs are going to be, and who do you think they should be?
So, I think it's going to be Maguire, Walker, and John Stones. I think Maguire, as horrible a form he's been at Manchester United, he is Gareth Southgate's child. He consistently plays for England despite his horrible form for club. John Stones and Walker, they're both great players from Manchester City. They both deserve to be there. So I would take those two. I would also take Fikayo Tomori for AC Milan. He had a bad performance against my club Chelsea the past few weeks, but he seems to be pretty solid in Italy. I think it goes back to the importance of England, spreading their players outside of the Premier League. We got Bellingham in Germany. We got Tomori there. So I think Tomori probably won't get selected for the World Cup, which is unfortunate, but I would definitely have him there. And I know you have a hot take, Brandon, right?
Yeah, so judging off what you were saying, talking about Gareth Southgate having a bias towards players who play in the Prem, I think that he's overlooking Tomori, but he's also overlooking Chris Smalling. I think Chris Smalling has been very good for Roma. Yeah, he wasn't the best for Man United. He had some good performances, some bad performances, but I think he's really refound himself under Jose Mourinho at Roma, and I think he deserves to be on the plane and maybe even start. I know that's a very hot take. People who are Man United fans or people who are English are probably going to hate me for this, but I do think that there is just a bias towards guys that play in the Prem. And, it's not the most unjustified bias because the Prem is the best league in the world at the moment. But I think Tomori is a wonderful, wonderful defender. He should start. Maguire should not start. Now, I do think Maguire should be on the plane. Maybe just because of his experience and he's, a steady head in the locker room. But personally, I would go with Tomori, Stones, and I guess Smallings because Kyle Walker has just come back from an injury. I don't know if he'll be fit, 100% fit for the World Cup. He definitely deserves to be on the plane, but I don't know about starting. Now, as for what Southgate is going to go for, Maguire is starting, Stones is probably going to start, and maybe someone like Eric Dyer is probably going to start. I think that's the most realistic backline. That's what he played in the last few games at the Nations League. So moving on from there, let's look at the midfield, but let's start out specifically with the wingbacks. And who do you think Southgate is going to go with, and who do you think he should go with? And remember, Reece James, fortunately, just got injured, and he will be out for the World Cup, which is a big miss for England.
Yeah, my favorite player on the England squad, Reece James, not making it anymore. Big disappointment, big loss, because you have to look at the performance of Trent Alexander-Arnold. He normally starts over Reece James, but his performance this season has been dreadful, and Reece was expected to get that starting position. So I think what Southgate will do and what I think he should do is you just got to start Trent. Hope he does well. On the other side, I really think that Luke Shaw will start on the other side, and I think this goes back to the boring style of play. You're going to have basically 5 defenders, and there's going to be no room to attack because none of them are really attackers at all. And Shaw's, his performance for Manchester United hasn't been very good either. And, it's tough when we're going to think about who he's going to play because Southgate's not going to give a chance to other defenders in the Premier League who don't have as much experience in the England squad. So we're going to have to hope that maybe he plays something like a 4-3-3 where it's more attack focused. But, that's just how I feel for the wingbacks.
Yeah, I agree. I think that Shaw, for the most part, is basically a lock. I agree in that sense. He's not the best player in the world, but he's fairly reliable, at least for England. He's been okay, nothing too exceptional, but decent player. On the right, Reece James is such a big miss because you can make an argument that, besides a guy like Kane, or Bellingham, he'd probably be the most informed English player heading into the World Cup. And I think that Southgate is going to have a serious question on his hand. Who does he start? Does he, push Kyle Walker out to right wing back, which he could do? He could maybe play Trent, as you said. Trippier, I think personally I would go with Trippier because just his experience at the World Cup, he was amazing at the 2018 World Cup. He was also pretty good at the Euros. And yes, he has kind of regressed a little bit. He was doing fine at Atletico. Now he plays at Newcastle. But I just think you can't look past the poor form that Trent is in, specifically defensively. He has been extremely poor going back, tracking back, defending, watching runners, things like that. So in my opinion, I think we should go with Trippier, and I think Southgate probably will go with that as well. All right, so now we moved on from the defense. Let's look at the midfield, specifically the 2 holding midfielders that will realistically play in Southgate's 3-5-2 or 3-5-2-1 or no, 3-4-2-1, 3-5-3, whatever he...
His boring formation.
Yeah, his boring formation. I'm messing up with the numbers right now, but the two holding midfielders in recent games, he's played with Declan Rice and Jude Bellingham. Do you think he's going to stick with that? Do you think he's going to switch it up, or do you think that's pretty realistic about what he's going to go with at the World Cup?
Yeah, look, seeing how boring he is, I think he's going to go with Bellingham and Rice. Neither of them are goal scorers. Bellingham can create chances. He does at Borussia Dortmund. Rice, solid West Ham player. He's been courted by Chelsea and Manchester United and other clubs. I think Rice and Bellingham are his two top choices. I think Rice has been on great form at West Ham this season, 2 assists, 1 goal. He's not just a playmaker, but he's great on defense. He tracks back. He commits a lot of fouls. Bellingham the same way, very much a center midfielder. I think he'll be great for England, as he is for Dortmund. He's still young. He needs to be given that chance. Could be a superstar in the future. Could be someone who's playing for Real Madrid or Barcelona, a world-class English player. And so we need to give him that chance at this World Cup. Ideally, though, you would play more of an attacking midfield. You have Mason Mount up there. When they played Germany in the last Nations League game, we saw when we took out the boring players, we were able to score goals. And I think that's going to be really important. We cannot play this, essentially 8-defender game with our world-class strikers up front who won't be supported because they're not playmakers and they don't make assists.
Yeah, if you look at Bellingham, I think that he's a lock. Just the form that he's been in for Dortmund and for England as well. He's just been, playing off the park. So credit to him. And yeah, I think it's pretty obvious he's going to start. Declan Rice, in my opinion, he'll probably start. I think he's a little overrated, in my opinion. Not the best player, but he's a solid option. And Southgate really likes to have just a solid base to his team, a reliable, consistent back line and defensive midfielders. So I think he's going to go with that. I also just look at the other options. Phillips hasn't really been playing much for Man City. Henderson, he's getting a little bit on in age. I think Henderson is a very, very good player. He's a player that I like to watch play a lot. I don't know if he'll start. Injuries is also a question there too. But it is a shame. You mentioned talking about how Southgate likes to play this boring style with boring players. I really wish he could just unlock the team and maybe play a different formation, maybe a 4 at the back or something like that, and then that way you can have an extra midfielder, an attacking midfielder. Maybe you can have like a Bellingham and a Rice, but then Mount in the middle or something along those lines. Now, going forward in the front line, he's probably going to play maybe 2 wingers and Harry Kane as a striker, or just 3 across the front line. I think it's pretty obvious that Kane is going to be the starting striker. There are some decent options behind him, and on the wings, there's some question here and there. In my opinion, I think it's relatively straightforward, but what are you thinking?
Yeah, look, so for the wingers, you're doing Foden, Kane, and then you're doing, say, Saka. You might even be able to put Mount at the wing. He's more of a central attacking midfielder. But, there's some depth in the squad. Kane, if he's injured or something happens, you want to rest him. Say we're 2-0 in the group stage, and you want to put someone like Tammy Abraham or Callum Wilson up there. That's always an option. Another winger is, Jadon Sancho. He hasn't been on the greatest form for Man United. Sometimes he's been pretty dreadful. But, you never know how these players are going to play at the biggest stage. He could be, in his mind, warming up, getting ready for, a dominant performance with England. And, of course, not to mention Jack Grealish, Aston Villa star, went and played for Man City, and he's been a little disappointing to some Man City fans. Hasn't really lived up to the hype, but he is able to deliver good balls in, as is Foden. Foden and Kevin De Bruyne, for example, have been delivering, great balls to Erling Haaland. And if Foden can keep that form up for England like he does with City, it's going to be a really dangerous attack. Do I think that they're going to score 3, 4, 5 goals every game and dominate? No, and the reason why is because the midfield and the defense they hold back too much. But if Southgate wanted to really unlock the squad, it could be the top scoring squad in the World Cup. Think of other, highly attacking squads. You think of maybe Brazil with Neymar and Rafinha, and you think of France with Mbappe and Griezmann. But Foden and Kane are a deadly pair of players. You put some other world-class England players along with them who have been on great form in the Premier League. You're talking about a World Cup win potentially, but I'm not confident that Southgate's going to make that happen.
I mean, I think England is blessed with wingers or guys that can play on the wing. I mean, in the last match against Germany, it was Phil Foden on the right, Raheem Sterling on the left, and then Kane through the middle. I think Foden and Kane, for the most part, are nailed down for a starting role, and I agree with that. Sterling, I'm not really sure. Obviously, definitely deserves to be in the squad. I don't know if I would start him, though, especially when you look at other guys that are playing well. Marcus Rashford is playing great for Manchester United. You look at a guy like Jadon Sancho, not in the best form, but still has an immense amount of talent and experience with the national team. You look at Bukayo Saka, who's been playing very, very well for Arsenal, and again, also has experience with England. And then, Mason Mount as well. So there are a lot of options. I think one of these guys will probably be left at home, just for the logistical fact that you can't bring a bunch of wingers. You have to bring other players. So I think one of these guys will probably be left at home. In my opinion, I would probably move Foden to the left and then put Saka on the right, or have Saka on the left and Foden on the right. I just think the form that he's in right now, and personally, I think Marcus Rashford's a very good player. I would, if I was managing England, I would maybe try to find a way to shoehorn him into the team. But we know Southgate's probably not going to do that. He's very rigid, seems kind of set in his ways, and that's just how he manages. And it's honestly to the detriment of the English national team. But yeah, I think he's going to go with, Kane in the middle, Foden out on the right, and then probably Sterling, because he seems to trust Sterling a lot. So yeah.
Yeah, look, Brandon, you make a good point. I totally forgot about Sterling. There was another player that you mentioned that I think... Oh, Rashford, great performance for Manchester United. He's really been, doing good things with Cristiano up top. And, as a Chelsea supporter, I want to see Sterling up there and performing for England. But if I did have to, go back to what you said, one of them's going to have to go home. And if I had to pick, unfortunately, Sancho would be the one to get cut because he hasn't been performing at the highest level when Manchester United's needed him. And, you could argue Grealish as well, because he's not been the greatest, but, you have to keep Kane. Kane's the only lock, in my opinion. The other players on the wing, it's variable based on their performance, how Southgate sees them in training. But Kane's probably the only lock for me.
Yeah. All right, so now we looked at the formation. We looked at the players that we think are going to go and get called up, the players that we think should be called up. Now let's look at England overall, what our predictions are for the World Cup, each of the 3 group stage games, and then how far overall we think they're going to go in the tournament. So my initial prediction when they did the draw for the World Cup groups was that England was my top favorite. I thought they were the only team that was solid enough at the back. They were the only team that was, just playing consistent enough, and I thought they were going to win the whole World Cup. We're talking back in March. Then the Nations League came around. They had some pretty terrible results. Some of the players are out of form. They're no longer my favorite anymore, but I still think that they will be a good enough team. I think they will go far, specifically due to their defensive solidity. But what do you think about specifically each of their 3 group stage games? They're in Group B with the USA, Iran, and Wales.
Yeah, so look, Brandon, going back to what I said earlier in the video and what you've been agreeing with me on, England has a very boring defensive side, and so it's going to be a low-scoring group stage, but it's going to be one in which England will come out on top. And so first game against the United States, Brandon's team, my team as well, if you can hear my accent. It's a tough one. I think England will come out on top. I say it's going to be probably 2-0. Second game against Iran, probably going to be a 1-0 win. Iran's got a strong team, but England's defense is going to be there. I think Kane will probably score a header or a penalty late in the game and make it 1-0. And then against Wales, a fellow member of the home nations, I think England generally on the world stage plays boring matches against Scotland, Wales, and Northern Ireland. So I'm seeing a 0-0 draw, maybe a 1-0 England victory. If Bale was in his prime, it'd be a totally different story. But I see them coming out the group in first. Moving on into the round of 16, I see them potentially playing Senegal or Ecuador, winner of the second place in Group A. Beating the team handily. and then playing, France or Denmark, depending on who comes first in their group. I think France will come first in their group, but Denmark's got that love story, with Christian Eriksen, and they want to win for him. And, it's going to be a tough game. And then their semifinal game is going to be against either Germany, Belgium, or Portugal. Ideally, I'm a big Cristiano Ronaldo fan. I want to see Cristiano play Messi in the final, make it a Portugal-Argentina final. So based on my bracket, it will be England versus Portugal in the semifinal, where Portugal will beat England to go to the final against Argentina. Is that a proper bracket? No, because, I genuinely don't see Portugal doing that well, despite their attacking options. But, that's the dream for everybody, for all viewers of this channel, and I'm sure, around the world. They want to see the final battle between the two GOATs. So I think England will have a great World Cup. It won't be a high-scoring one, so, England fans don't expect to be up and celebrating a bunch of goals, because it's just not going to happen.
So, for me, I agree with that. England is just, they play a very boring, very kind of pragmatic style of play, that they value defense more than attack, which is not it's not a bad concept, but I think it's a little misguided when you just look at the attacking talent that England has. But looking at each of their group stage matches individually, I think that Iran is a very strong team defensively. Overall, they're a solid team. Mehdi Taremi up top is very dangerous, but England's talent is just way too much to overcome. I think it's going to be a close game, 1-0 to England. Up next, they have the USA. Now, this is going to be a very interesting game, because if you look at the way that the USA plays, sometimes we mirror that of England, where it's very pragmatic. We try to control the ball, but we don't like to really be dynamic and, very expansive going forward. But at the same time, we often play the best when we have our backs against the wall and we're trying to hit the team in transition or on the counter. That being said, I think both team styles will nullify each other. I think it's going to be like a 0-0 result. An exciting game, but neither side can really break through the deadlock. And then against Wales, I think out of these teams, Wales is probably the weakest team, especially defensively. So I think it's going to be maybe 2-1, maybe 2-0. Comfortable win for England. But again, like you said, they're not going to be dropping loads and loads of goals on these smaller teams. Into the round of 16, I think that England is probably going to play Qatar, in my opinion, because I think Qatar is going to finish second in their group. And as strong as Qatar may be, as surprising as they may be with the home crowd behind them, the home advantage, again, England simply has too much talent. I don't think it's going to be a complete destruction or anything like that, but they should handily win. Same thing if it's Senegal or the Netherlands or Ecuador. I think that if you just look at each of these teams and how they match up to England, I think England is better, easily better than each one of them in terms of player quality, in terms of defensive strength as well. Especially when you look at a team like Ecuador, that is a very free-flowing and attacking side, but they're not the most experienced, and I think if a team like England can just easily pick them apart. Even a team like Netherlands, that would be a very interesting match. I don't know. I think that just the defensive solidity, the experience that these English players have will carry them through. Now, the quarterfinal matchup will be interesting because I don't think France is really going to make it that far in this World Cup. I don't think they're going to be eliminated in the group stage, but I think Denmark is going to top the group, and I think Denmark will probably beat either Mexico or Poland and then meet England in the quarterfinals. Now, in my other video, my early World Cup predictions video, I said England is going to beat Denmark. I'm going to go back on that decision, and I'm going to say that Denmark, who I think is going to be the surprise team this World Cup, or just a dark horse kind of team, I think that they're going to upset England and eliminate England in the quarterfinals. I think that's very possible, just the way that this Danish team plays. They're just so fun to watch. They just, flow on the pitch. Like, each of the players know their position well. They all work extremely great together. The manager knows his team as well. And then Christian Eriksen is going to be there as well. So I think that England is going to go out in the quarterfinals. Now, if they don't, and they go in the semifinals and they'll play either a team like Germany or a team like Uruguay, I also think that that's the end of the road for them. I don't think that this team is making it to the final. What led them to the final in 2020 was that strong defensive solidarity, and I think they still have that defensive mindset, but it's not as strong as it was last summer, especially when you look at a guy like Reece James, who was out, or a guy like Harry Maguire, who was in decent form going into the Euros. Now he's in awful form and he's probably still going to be playing. So they're still strong defensively, but not as strong as they were. So for that very reason, I don't think that they're going to get into the semifinals. I think quarterfinals is where the end of the road is for England.
Yeah, and that's a reasonable prediction. I think it's a little biased of me to go ahead and say that they're going to make the semifinal. I think that's reasonable. If they play the boring defensive game that everyone's afraid of, they might not even make it out of the group stage. Very possible that the United States, who haven't been on great form, could upset England, and then Iran could as well. So you never know with this England squad. It just depends on whether they're going to be out there. And, I wouldn't discount the fact that it's going to be in a very hot country, Qatar. The African teams might go out there and play in their element and play really well. The climate favors them. It does not favor, windy, rainy, boring England. So it's definitely going to be a World Cup where I don't think a European team will win, and I certainly don't think England is going to win. It's just the climate's just not there in favor of them. And we saw the same thing in Brazil in 2014. Climate did not favor England, and they were eliminated early.
All right, so I'm saying England go out to possibly Denmark around the quarterfinals. I'm not ruling out semifinal finish, but I think quarterfinals is the most realistic. And you are saying semifinals. If they make it to the third place match, do you think they'll win bronze?
I don't think they'll be winning bronze, Brandon.
Okay.
It's going to be the same thing as in 2018. If they do make it to the semifinal, which would be a miracle, they'll shut down. They won't care. England players are some of the least passionate players for their national team. So unless the country's fully behind them, and I think they might have an inspired performance following the passing of Her Majesty, it's just not going to be a great time for England fans this year.
Yeah, I think that is, like you said, to my prediction, I think your prediction is also very, very reasonable, very realistic. But let us know what your predictions are in the comments below. Do you think that we're, being too critical of Gareth Southgate? I mean, look at his record. He got to World Cup semifinals, Nations League semifinals, Euro final. That's not a bad record if you just look at the results. But, let us know what you think about our criticisms of him, our criticisms of certain players, like, say, a guy like Harry Maguire or someone like that. Do you agree with our hot takes? Do you agree with how far we think England's going to go in the World Cup? Make sure to type in the comments below. Also, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Share this video with a friend, and let me know if you want to focus on another team heading into the World Cup on this channel. Anyway, I'm Brandon. This has been Harry.
Nice talking to you guys. It's been great. Thank you for having me on the Football Bloc, Brandon.
All right, now we'll see you guys next time.